Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here today to review Buffalo 66. So, I've seen a number of kind of Christine Ricci movies going on and seeing movies like Black Snake Moan or kind of interested in Monstrous. I've seen kind of stuff here and there of the one show Yellow Jacket, and Christina Ricci's also on that also. Uh, but so I went on and I was kind of interested in this movie, Buffalo 66, because I would go on and kind of see it from time to time somewhere, whether it's kind of looking up Christina Ricci stuff. But so I had also gone on and seen this YouTuber called Rainbow Fright, that's two words, Fright with an F. So after kind of hearing what her review was to talk about this movie, I was kind of much more interested in this film. Definitely go on and check out Rainbow Fright, and I'll leave a link down in the description below to kind of go on and give credit where credit is due. Even though I technically kind of been like lukewarm about this movie. So yeah, there's a lot of interesting horror stuff that is to, of course, be put into that channel, and I thought it was kind of really interesting. In a lot of probably the movies that I would go on and watch on that channel would be, or a lot of movies that I would watch would be on that channel. So I was like, oh, okay, this is interesting. So definitely go on and check that out. Rainbow Fright. Hopefully I'll leave a link down below in the comments or in the description. So with that said, Buffalo 66. What is this about? So I think immediately I think people are looking for some kind of payout in this movie, to think that there's going to be like some declothing moments within this film. I will let everybody know that by the end of this movie there is a strip club scene, so there's that. I have to go on and kind of mention this kind of stuff so that way it gets people's interest regardless of what actually happens within this film. So, Buffalo 66. We have a movie where a guy named Billy is to have a very rough life, and to the point I'm like, man, I feel like so compassionate with Billy's character, and a lot of this kind of did somewhat remind me of a Alicia Silverstone Del Toro movie called Excess Baggage. It's been a while since I've seen that movie, and I was lucky I could remember like even anything about that. But that's what that kind of reminded me of. Like, this movie kind of reminded me of that. So, Billy used to go on and have a very hard life to showcase parts of his childhood where things really didn't go well and were very dark. We have Billy that is to go on and try to hope that he is to go on and do something good, but he ends up doing something bad instead. So, because Billy's whole life is a fight, basically. So, metaphorically speaking. So, Billy is to go on and spend 5 years in jail, and I'll talk about that reasoning like right out of the gate when we get into spoilers. And so when Billy is to come out of prison, he is to have lied to his family about where he had gone for the last 5 years. And Billy, of course, was to be calling his mother to be heading home. And so we, of course, have Billy's mother that's like, well, hey, how about you come home and have dinner with us? So Billy is to go on and say, it's like, well, hey, well, I have a girlfriend, like, I'm busy, like, she's very sick and I'm taking care of her. And so we go on and we have Billy's mother that is kind of arguing to the point of Billy finally relenting and saying that, oh no, like, okay, fine, like, I will finally bring this girl to this dinner, like, fine, just to make you happy. So Billy, while he's running around and taking a leak, is to find a girl named Layla who is at some tap dancing class. And Billy decides, because I guess this is the most convenient girl around, that he is to go and kidnap her and have her supposedly pretend that she is a girl named Wendy. And come to find out, Billy has had this secret, like, fantasy about a girl named Wendy. And eventually it'll come out some point in this movie that Billy's never really had a girlfriend. And so Billy has always ever just kind of pined away about a girl, but has never really had one. So Billy then goes on and is to grab Layla and tell her she's Wendy, and then it seems that when Layla is to go on with Billy and continue to be around him and continue to understand Billy more and more so by definitely being around his family. And I kind of like the way like the camera was with the whole table scene, and how they were trying to eventually just kind of look at like almost look at the camera and talk to certain people. Or like I thought that was kind of really interesting how there's like 4 people around this table, but it always looked like there were 3, and I thought that that was kind of really interesting, like kind of like a POV kind of thing, which I thought was really kind of cool. So Layla eventually is to have this kind of Stockholm syndrome, and it seems that at first this relationship really was a pretending thing, but then somehow or another it just starts to become real. And the one thing that I think is kind of missing from this movie is getting any bit of Layla's possible backstory. Like, I would have liked for us to not only understand Billy's life, but then also to eventually get into Layla's life and why Layla would possibly be so easily wanting to go on and possibly want to be with a guy named Billy who, yeah, may be difficult and may go on and eventually be this aggressive guy. But so, but with this said, we also have Billy's story that is to kind of spiral out of control to the point of it seems that Billy is very tempted to want to risk his life by the end of this film. And so we're either going to either have a happy ending or have an ending where just like, oh, okay, so this is just how it's all going to end for this character. So with that said, let's get into spoilers. Let's go on and just rattle off everything that happens with this movie, and to be in a little bit more specific about what is to have transpired within this film, if people are, of course, are interested. Right now, this movie currently available on Tubi. So here's the thing. So grading this movie, I would have to say that this movie is a slow slog of a film, and honestly may be a bad movie, but I personally liked this film. Regardless of people going on and like, well, of course, because you don't like good films. For me, I like this film, regardless of me having the ultimate grading of this being a bad film. Because I really had a moment where I'm like, man, I really feel for Billy's character. Even though, yeah, he's still doing something wrong, he's still doing something bad, or thinking about doing something wrong and something bad. But still. So with that said, let's just go into spoilers. Let's go into that double 5 time territory. Let's just go into spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about to have you spoil this movie. So, in the very beginning of this film, I'm not going to break this film down in the exact same way that the movie does. I'm going to go on and, like, whatever I feel needs to be put in certain areas, I'm going to put it there. So with that said, for me, the real interesting part of this film is to know why Billy had gone to jail. So, Billy had gone 5 years in prison because Billy was to make this gambling debt of 10 grand on the Buffalo Bills to win the Super Bowl. And so we have Billy doing this bet, and so what happens is this game goes all the way down to the field goal, and Kuinka Dinkley, the kicker who is to have a presence in this film, called Scott Woods, was to miss this field goal kick, and we of course have Billy, who does not have 10 grand to pay off this bookie, who is coincidentally played by Mickey Rourke. So, and I was kind of surprised for this movie. I'm like, how did they get these certain people? Like, were they just friends of theirs that they all just like, hey man, like, could you go on and be in this movie? Like, could you go on and do this? Like, I know that this movie may not be like the money and whatever, but like, hey, do you want to just kind of go on and do this film? So Billy is to go and be, of course, confronted by this bookie who is to eventually mention like this kind of bookie story and what he's going to go on and have Billy do. So the bookie mentions to Billy that there is a guy that is to have to go to prison, and the bookie doesn't want him to. So Billy's going to have to go on and confess that he had done this crime and go and spend 5 years in jail for this guy. And so the bookie is to go on and tell Billy, it's like, well, hey, if you ever go on within those 5 years and you try to do anything to reverse your sentence or anything like that, like, we're going to come after you. So Billy is to have some prep time to go on and eventually lie to his family that's telling him, hey, he's going away. He's going to eventually go and work in this job and so on and so forth. So we have Billy that goes to court, and we have them, of course, saying that Billy is guilty and that they're going to throw the book at him and like he's going to spend 5 years. So we have this weird kind of thing where they have this kind of these little clips of every person's face. They show like the lawyer's face, Billy's face, the judge's face, and then Abraham Lincoln, oddly. And like there's probably some times where they're like, you know what, we really just wanted to have like some fun moments here, and like we weren't always thinking about like that everyone was going to see this film. We were just going on and just trying to put something together here. So Billy is going into prison, and so he's having his best friend, who is named Goon, who is kind of giving Goon all these kind of envelopes that he's supposed to send them out on certain times of the year, so his family will still think that supposedly Billy is still like not in prison. So Billy goes on and spends his 5 years, and so Billy's now out. So Billy is to walk from prison to just try to walk his way home, basically. So, like, he ends up going on a bus, and he ends up trying to make his way home, like, hitch his way home. So Billy at one point is a desperately need to go to the bathroom. So before he goes on the bus, he's asking this this prison, like, hey, do you guys have a bathroom that I can use? And they're like, no, like, this is where we just kind of like leave you out here. Like, no, this is like the departing part of the like, no, you can't use a bathroom. And so Billy's going on and is to go on this bus, and then eventually, once he gets out of this bus and goes to the bus station, he is, of course, looking for a bathroom, and every single bathroom that he goes to is out of order, or the restaurant that he goes into is closed, and everywhere that he goes, like, there's always like, yeah, I'm sorry, like, you can't use this bathroom. So Billy has to go on and find this one dance class that is going on and doing tap dancing. And so Billy goes on to go into this bathroom, and there's some guy next to him, and Billy's like, "Hey, could you stop looking at my pants? Like, could you stop looking at me?" And we go on, and we have Billy, who is in desperate need at this point to pee. And so when Billy just finally just whips it out, we have this guy that's going on and saying like, "Oh my god, that's so big." And so Billy just starts beating the crap out of him after he like whips himself back out, if you know what I mean, and starts beating the crap out of this guy and telling him to get out of there. But now Billy can't pee in this bathroom. He can't concentrate. So because of that one like scene that's gonna haunt him forever. So Billy then goes on and is to instead ask Layla for this quarter, and ask to borrow a quarter. Like, I'm like, how could you borrow a quarter? Normally I would like I would try to do like an exchange of money, but I guess that's like just borrow a quarter, I guess. So Billy's to borrow a quarter to call his mother, and is mentioning that he's going to make his way home, and that eventually he has a girlfriend and he's coming home for dinner. So arguments ensue until forcing Billy to supposedly bring this girlfriend over. And so Billy, who has already gone on to not exactly been the best to this girl Layla, the only girl who he is to go on and see conveniently here. Layla goes on, or Billy is to go on and grab Layla, and is to kind of drag her to the back part of this dance class, and eventually has her go to her car. And Billy is to complain to Layla about how like unclean her windshield is, and Billy is to go into her car, realizing that it's a stick shift, it's not an automatic. And so I guess Billy is to go on and say that he is to normally drive like a luxury car and this and that. So Billy and Layla have to kind of switch so that way Layla can drive this car. You know, like, wouldn't that have been the time for Layla to run off? Because all Layla has to do is just run away from this guy. Yeah, she's in high heels, but she could just like chuck those bad boys off and run like the heavens away from this guy. Because all she needs to do is run. This guy doesn't have a gun. He doesn't have a crowbar. He has nothing. He just has his hands. He just has hands. So you would have thought at some point Billy would have grabbed like some crowbar or something from this girl's vehicle, but he never does. Because normally a lot of people would have like a tire iron or something because maybe they'd have a flat tire. I'm overthinking this. So, and that seems weird. So, it's weird. It is. So, Billy is to now go on and drive with Layla to this home. And so Billy is going on and telling Layla that it's like, hey, like, you better go to my parents. You better make me look good. And he says this a lot. Like, you better make me look good. Like, if you... here's also a weird part of the dialogue here. Billy is to say that if she messes this up, that he'll never talk to her again. But if Billy is to go on and have Layla win his parents over, that Billy will go on and like be her best friend. and maybe let her go, and so on and so. Layla is to now have the name Wendy, and so Billy is providing Layla this backstory of them like high school sweethearts kind of thing, and Billy's gonna do all the talking, and she doesn't really have to say a word. So Billy and Layla, uh, after all this talk, after all, like, we have Billy who finally goes on by this tree and is to whip himself out and pee right next to this tree, and he's like, man, I've been wanting to pee for freaking hours now, and finally I'm able to. And so Layla is to have her hands on the dashboard. I'm like, here's another opportunity where she could have escaped. But she didn't, and I don't get why. Because really, Billy is concentrating on peeing. He's not concentrating on watching Layla. And plus, his back was turned to her. That would have been an opportune time for Layla to drive off, but she didn't. Again, makes me want to know the backstory of Layla's character and why she didn't go on and ever do anything. Maybe she thought that her life was somehow going to be at risk. I'm not sure. I would really love for one day for there to have been like a remake of this movie, but maybe not it be like so horribly dark. But like there's an interesting idea here. Weirdly, beyond this like very dark tone and stuff like that with it. So, anyways, Billy and Layla. So, Billy and Layla go on to this dinner table, and we immediately have Billy, who his mother is to give him chocolate, and so Billy is to go on and say, like, you know I'm allergic to chocolate, right, Ma? Like, you remember the one time that you gave me chocolate and I started bubbling up like a balloon? And so, yeah, Billy was to just go on and was having his mother say, like, wow, Billy, you're really getting puffy. Maybe you should just slap an ice pack on your face. And I'm like, these aren't bruises. He's having an allergic reaction, obviously. What the like, really? Like, this guy's life could have been at risk. And you're just saying, oh yeah, I think you just slap an ice pack on your face. Just keep eating the chocolate, though. So, Bill, because we're kind of going through home videos and like old movies and stuff like that. So, because Leia, I've been watching too much Star Wars. Layla is going on and as Wendy, wanting to go through some old photos of Billy as a kid. So, come to find out, like, Jimmy, freaking Billy's dad, what a piece of work. But that kind of piece of work, yeah, some stuff just kind of like sounds like a thing. Wow. I'm not going to get further into that. So, Jimmy goes on and is to weirdly just hug Layla very inappropriately, consistently, and Jimmy is telling Layla that Daddy loves her, and I'm like, this is so weird. And Jimmy is hugging on this woman and saying like how young she is, and this is freaking getting uncomfortable. But he does it more than once. So they're exchanging photos. And speaking of Jimmy, Billy goes on and has a dog at one point that is to have, I guess, peed on the carpet or some goofy crap like that. Like, stuff like that happens a lot. Like, there's pets that end up getting sick. That happens quite often in my house. Because we just consistently have a cat where, like, we feed her treats and like she like I guess really just doesn't like these treats for some reason. I don't know why. So it's like, why do we keep giving her these things when she's just gonna eventually get sick from them? It makes no sense. But so we go on, and so we have a story where in this flashback, Jimmy is to want to do away with this dog, and I'm not talking about doing away with it in the conventional sense of just like giving this dog away. No, Jimmy goes on and does something possibly more horrific. And Layla is to go on and ask Jimmy and Billy, like, hey, whatever happened to this dog? And both of them are to go on and say, like, oh, I don't remember. You remember. You remember. So we have Jimmy and Layla who are to go into this other room so that way Jimmy can showcase Layla that at one point he was a musician. He was a singing artist. And so Jimmy goes in this room to perform to Layla, and Layla's watching on as Jimmy is to supposedly say that he's really going to sing, and it seems that like he's like lip syncing, but it's like, hey, like this is actually pretty good as far as lip syncing goes. So like bravo to for Ben to not only have to go on and do this kind of character, but yeah, but when Jimmy was mentioning that he like wants like food to be rushed because he's starting to get the shakes, I'm like, yeah, I've experienced that well in hand where people would go on and just get very shaky because they're waiting on food. So not me though. Eventually, I would come up with a way to find food, but it is what it is. So, moving on. So, Layla, Layla is to listen to Billy's dad sing, and she's like, "Wow, you're great at this," so on and so forth. So, Billy is to go on and is like eventually the dinner is coming, and all of a sudden we weirdly have Jimmy, who is to mention about how Billy's fork is oddly pointed on the dinner table, as if it's some kind of weird metaphor to stab Jimmy in the heart. And Billy's like, what are you talking about? Like, it's just a knife that's on the table. Like, and so Billy is to finally move the knife away from Jimmy, so Jimmy will frickin' stop. And so we go on and we have Jimmy that is consistently like yelling about something, and then Jen is also going on and watching the Buffalo Bills, and she is to mention at some point that the only game that she ended up missing and the Buffalo Bills lost was when she was having Billy, when she was pregnant with Billy. And she's like, man, I wish that on that day, like, Billy was never born, so I can go on and watch my Buffalo Bills win that day. And I'm like, wow, what a piece of work. So we have Layla. What's going on with Billy? And so she is trying to work as much as she can to come up with this backstory on how like Billy is working with the CIA and she was to be some secretary and she just fell in love with Billy, and everybody's to go on and love Billy, even the president somehow is to know Billy even exists. And so Layla's just going on, and so we finally have it at one point where Billy is just to like need to go into the bathroom or wash his hands or something. And so Layla is going on and telling Billy's parents that she's pregnant with his child. Like, hey, don't tell him quite yet, but I'm pregnant. It's just like, Man, this girl is like really like pouring it on. And so like the parents are now happy because they're just going on and on about like, oh my god, like a kid, this is amazing, da 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 da. So Billy and Layla, like after that whole dinner, Billy used to say it's like, well, hey, uh, like you made up so much stuff, like this story was too good, it was unreasonable, and like my father doesn't believe like I'm in the CIA. My dad doesn't believe this. My dad doesn't believe that. So, like, if anything, I'm sure with his parents, they're probably just happy that this guy probably has a woman. Because, like, if anything, it's like, yeah, like, I'll believe anything this girl says because at least this guy has a boyfriend. Or at least this guy has a girlfriend. My bad. I get the words switched around. My bad. So now Billy is to want to go on and consistently call a guy named Goon. And so Goon is Billy's best friend, but at some point, Goon is to tell uh, Billy that it's like, well, hey, like you call me Goon all the time, so does everyone else. I want everyone to stop calling me Goon. My name is Rocky. Call me Rocky. And so Billy gets so upset with Goon. Is like, well, you know why everyone calls it Goon? Because you're this, because you're that, because so Billy just wants. Oh, this is the reason why Billy goes off. Billy wants to use this phone and call Goon, or call Rocky, because Billy wants this address, for this uh, this club that is owned by that is actually owned by uh, Scott Woods. So because Billy wants to go after this field goal kicker that cost him that game and was to make him go to jail for 5 years. So Billy's wanting to go to the absurd level of going after this guy who missed this field goal kick and kill him and shoot him with this very small gun. So we have Goon that is not willing to give this guy this address, and so Billy is to figure out by calling information and eventually calling this club and finding out that this guy doesn't show up till like 2 a.m. So Billy is to go on and have some time to just kind of wait things out. So Billy goes with Layla to this bowling alley. And I believe this guy named Sonny is to be the owner of said bowling alley. So we have Billy that's talking to this bowling alley owner. He's going to give him this lane. And this owner was to give Billy like his own private locker. And like he paid it out of his own money. And so that was like really nice of him. So Billy goes on and is to start to bowl as just kind of Layla is really just watching, and I'm like, why not just kind of have like a rotation? Like I get kind of Billy's probably forking over the money for this lane and whatever, but like hey, like kind of have Layla bowl also. But it seems like eventually she gets to bowl, so Billy starts bowling and he does strike after strike after strike. And then all of a sudden, when there's a malfunction going on in his lane and he's having the owner fix it, Billy then is to go on and realize that maybe like his routine is messed with. So Billy then goes on and is to throw this ball and he ends up getting into the gutter and he's like, see, I knew it. So Layla is to laugh or chuckle a little bit, so Billy is to let Layla go up there and bowl. So Layla goes on and is to toss this ball, and so she goes in and gets a strike, and she's like, "Yeah!" And so Billy's like, "Of course, like yeah, like I talk all kinds of smack, like having her just go and toss this ball, and she gets a strike. Of course she does." So Layla, Layla is to just continue bowling, and Billy's like, "You know what? I'm just gonna go. I'm just gonna go on." And so that's when again Billy is to call and kind of get this other information for this guy. So Billy and Layla go to dinner. They go to Din Din. Uh, Din Din is the stupidest word for dinner. But eventually someone said it somehow. Somebody coined that phrase. So I think Din Din is probably something you only say to probably your pets, right? Is there any time anybody goes on and like says like, "Hey guys, Din Din, it's ready"? I swear that should be a thing. Yeah, is that Din Din? I didn't know. I wasn't aware. So Billy and Layla go to this restaurante, and all of a sudden, coinkadinkly, Layla is to have seen in Billy's locker, in this bowling locker, she notices that Billy was to have this picture of some girl. So Layla is asking questions about the picture, and all of a sudden, Billy is to go on and coinkadinkly see this Wendy girl at this restaurant, and Wendy's like, "Oh my god, like you, Billy, like we went to school together, and like third grade, right? But you always weirdly were to uh like kind of be following me and were watching over me, and never knew what that was, but like, hey, here's my fiance that's right here, and we're gonna go and make out right after we're done kind of talking to you and making fun of you and humiliating you." And so Layla's realizing that Billy had a crush on this girl and had been pining away for this woman for years, and it never happened. And Layla is to start to realize this, and so Layla is to say, "It's oh, whoa, hey, what a coincidence! We had the same name. We share the same name. It's weird. So many women in the world, we have the same name. What a weird coincidence." So instead of waiting for this food, we have both of them. They're just like, "You know what? I just want to leave. This is awful." Billy does, like, Layla wants her food. Layla at least wants like a hot chocolate or something. So Billy and Layla go on to this hotel. They get a room. So it's like 30 some bucks to rent this room. So Layla and Billy go into this room, and they're just laying down till like 2 o'clock. Uh, Billy wanted to go on and take a hot shower, and was to mention how cheap his father was, and how his father always wanted like a certain amount of water in the tub, if they're going to have a tub, uh, or probably more than likely you could probably only spend a certain number of minutes in the shower probably. So we have Billy that is to go on and have the tub the way he wants it, and goes in the tub, and all of a sudden, like, Layla is telling Billy, it's like, "Well, hey, like, can I just go into the room with you and just kind of like we can just talk?" And Billy is saying like, "No, like I'm in the tub. Like, no, like this is my room. This is the like I'm in here, like going in the so Layla at first is to go on and like just be in the room with him, because the more and more they bicker, Billy eventually just gives in, because that's usually how he goes with things. So Layla goes from like being like sitting next to the tub to being actually in the tub and her not having clothes on next to Billy, and Billy has his tank top and underwear on, and he's in the tub. So finally, after it seems that Layla is, or they are kind of considering getting out, Billy has Layla get out first, and as soon as you start to have her coming out of the bathroom, it cuts to something else. I'm like, oh, but I get it, because we have strip club coming up next, anyways. So Billy goes with Layla to kind of lay in this bed, and we have these moments of them holding hands or possibly kissing or any number of other things that we have to either think that is really happening or imagining. So we also had Layla when she was in the bowling alley. She was doing that kind of tap dancing and doing all this stuff. And then she goes back into scene and she's kind of making fun of Billy. And and so Billy tells Layla, "Stop tapping! Stop! No, no, no! You're gonna mess up the floor." So Billy is to leave, and so Layla is saying like, "Hey, you're gonna come back, right? You're like, give me a kiss goodbye before you leave." And Billy's like no, like I'm just gonna leave. I'm just gonna... So that's when Billy is to go to this strip club, and so Billy is to call and tell Goon or Rocky that like he's gonna leave him everything in his bowling locker because that's all that he has left in his life is just the bowling locker. Yeah. So Billy then goes into the strip club and is looking around at all the women, and then is looking at Scott Woods, this guy who is to like. It seems like he just has this like speedo on and this like tux tie or this kind of bow tie, and he's just partying it on with all these women. I'm like, wait a minute, like this just seems kind of odd for this guy who is to have owned this place to be kind of doing what he's doing. But I guess like, hey, if the money's flowing for him, the money's flowing, I guess. So we have Billy that was to have had this small gun on him. So Billy goes into this place and is to want to shoot Scott in the head, and so shoots him through the head. Blood is on the back of his head, and then Billy goes on and shoots himself in the head, and bullet goes through the head. Blood splatters the other way, and I'm like, this is a very small gun to have that kind of impact, but like this is a movie, let it go. So we go on and we have Scott who's dead, we have Billy who's dead, and like we're thinking like, wait a minute, is this the end? Is this how this ends with strip club and all this, and all these women and all of their glory? What the fuck? But then we all of a sudden realize that Billy is thinking about all this and is reconsidering not only shooting this guy but shooting himself, because if he would have gone on to kill this guy, he didn't want to go back to prison, so he would have done himself in. So Billy reconsiders this because he realizes that there's one good thing in his life, which is to have possibly really just be this girl that he met today that it seems might be interested in Billy. So Billy goes on and is calling the goon back and telling him that, like, hey, everything that I just said, it's all off. So Billy goes to this store and is to get Layla this hot chocolate. I'm like, man, like, these characters probably haven't eaten all day long. Well, that's not true. They went to the dinner with the family and they ate that kind of absurd meal that Layla was seemed to be getting a huge amount of portions with, and Jimmy's going like, "Hey, everyone gets an even amount of meal. Everyone gets even." Whatever. So, man, what a piece of work. So Billy goes on and is to go to this store and buy this hot chocolate and buy this heart cookie that he's going to get for Layla. And what we end up seeing next after he buys this is he goes on to be in bed with Layla, hugging her, and that's how the movie ends. So with that said, that is to hopefully be most of this film. I know there were some things that I kind of quickly went over, or there was some stuff that I probably forgot along the way. But either way, who knows if anybody's really going to review this film. If you do, I really appreciate it. Because really, at the end of the day, there was a lot of stuff that I went on and said here. So with that said, I'm gonna move on. Have to go on and do a number of other possible reviews for today. So that's every single day. So that said, bye everybody. Bye everybody.